Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Nick Underhill reports that Devon Achane has scheduled a visit with the New Orleans Saints at the team's facility. If you are an LSU fan, how in the world could you forget Devon Achane? He and the Texas A&M Aggies obviously upset LSU this year in College Station when, they were staring down the barrel of 4-8. God, that would have been so good. Also would have been good for LSU not to blow that game. But Achane was obviously a big part of it. Dynamic runner. He is, considering what the Saints over the last 15 years have kind of targeted in their running backs, bigger, more physical backs. Achane at 5'8", 184 doesn't exactly fit the profile, but when you look at the skill set, blazing speed, by the way, 4.32 in the 40. 4.32 in the 40. Good runner, can catch the ball, can also return kicks and punts. Who does that remind you of? Remind you of another former Saints running back? Anybody? Paul, you're a Saints guy. Who would that remind you of? Undersized guy, really fast, catch, run, and special teams. Who would that remind you of? Who do you think?
I'll go with Darren Sproles.
Give that man a ding if you would, Muse. I'd appreciate the ding. I think he is a dead ringer for that role on this team. And Alvin Kamara, to an extent, obviously the size, not what Sproles was. He's bigger than Sproles. But Kamara's been that guy as well. Had 80-plus receptions each of his first 3 years in the league. Kamara is certainly a capable return man, although the Saints have found other roles, have used other guys in those roles as Kamara's role in the offense has increased, and is a guy that has surprisingly good ability between the tackles, despite the reputation. I would love it. I think it makes a ton of sense if you're able to get Achane. The other thing I'll remind you, and you might say, well, why would the Saints draft a running back when you've got Alvin Kamara under contract and you just signed Jamal Williams? Of course, Jamal Williams led the NFL in rushing touchdowns last year with 17 during the season in Detroit. I want to remind you, when you look at both of those players' contracts, actually, let's take a second and look at them together. Alvin Kamara's contract, if you take a closer look, the way that they've restructured his deal, there is an off-ramp for Kamara's contract after next season. So if you look at it, Kamara this year, the cap hit is $8.1 million. And next year, the dead cap hit, you can pull this up, Paulie, the dead cap hit is $16.7 million. So essentially, if Kamara's on the roster next year, his cap hit would be $18.8 million. The dead cap hit is 16.7. So basically, if Kamara's not on the roster, it counts $2 million less. But here's where the Saints built themselves a protection. If the Saints release Kamara pre-June 1 next year, his dead cap number is 16.7. They'd save $2.1 million against the cap. And if they designate him as a post-June 1 release or trade, the number drops all the way to $6.9 million. So you wouldn't get that money at the start of free agency, but it would come eventually. That's what we thought was going to happen with Michael Thomas this year, and then he ultimately agreed to a lesser contract to stay. Point is, the Saints have an out. If Kamara declines this year, and he's likely going to miss 6 games, that's just generally what's agreed upon, right? When you look at precedent in the NFL for personal conduct policy violations, the trial going on in Las Vegas, and Kamara will be, the trial date is set for when the Saints will be in camp next year. So we're sort of assuming and planning for Kamara to miss time this year, and then also the fact that the Saints have an off-ramp for his contract after this season tells you it could be, depending on what happens, Kamara's last season in New Orleans. They just signed Jamal Williams to this free agent contract. 2 years, $8.35 million deal with the New Orleans Saints. And whenever you look at the contract, 3 years, $12 million is the deal he signed with the Saints. And the Saints have an off-ramp after year 2 of this contract as well, where they'd essentially have about a $2 million dead cap number for Jamal Williams in 2025. So this could be Kamara'S last year in New Orleans. Jamal Williams could be here for 2 years, and then you could get out of that deal. Point being, if you're the Saints, it's about time. If the right person is there to draft and have on a rookie contract, this transition to that player makes sense if the right player is there. Now, I like Devon Achane a lot. And if he's a second or third round guy, meaning he's a day 2 guy, fine by me if the Saints decide he's the one that they go after. My point is, with this running back draft class, however, I'm good. I am so good with any player at that position the Saints choose, except any player they might take at 29. Because there is not enough value. Let me rephrase this. I think there will be good players on the board at 29. If Jahmyr Gibbs from Alabama is on the board and you take him at 29, it's hard to be upset with that. And I wouldn't be upset with the player because I think he's a fantastic player. My problem would be there is so much depth at that position in this draft that you can get an equivalent player or a very good player at great value anywhere else in the draft. Like, let's just run through this real quickly. Like, here's the top running backs in the draft according to Pro Football Focus. Again, just one metric. Pro Football Focus is Bijan Robinson, number 1. They got Jahmyr Gibbs of Alabama as the 50th best player in the draft. So theoretically, you could get Jahmyr Gibbs in round 2, according to this. Zach Charbonnet from UCLA. They got Achane ranked as the 70th best player. Basically, he's a third-round guy. Dwayne McBride from UAB. Tank Bigsby from Auburn is a stud. They got him ranked as the 83rd best player. Kendre Miller from TCU. Tyjae Spears, they ranked as the 8th best running back in this draft, the 96th overall player. You're talking about a late 3, early 4th round grade on Tyjae Spears. Deuce Vaughn from Kansas State. Sean Tucker from Syracuse. That's not even talking about a guy like Chris Williams from Kentucky, who led the SEC in rushing 2 seasons ago. If you look at the ESPN guys, Kiper, McShay, Reed, Kiper's top running backs, Robinson, Gibbs, McBride, Achane, Charbonnet. McShay ranks him Robinson, Gibbs, Charbonnet, Achane, Spears from Tulane 5th. Reed has him Robinson, Gibbs, Charbonnet, Achane, Bigsby from Auburn. You see the point? Like, there's not really a consensus, but you see Achane popping there a couple times. Miller has Roschon Johnson from Texas, the 4th best running back in this draft. My point is, the Saints are in a position where they could very well pull the trigger on a running back in this year's draft. There are so many elite level running backs and great talented running backs in this year's draft that at any point in this draft, if they decide to take a running back, I'm going to be good with it because I don't know how you could go wrong with any of the names I just rattled off. And if you get value at a position of need, and that's a player that can help you transition from Kamara with Williams, without however that's going to work, I'm good with it. I mean, effectively, we saw the Lions do the same thing in drafting Jamal Williams' replacement. And even though he led the NFL in rushing touchdowns, they didn't have to overpay for him in free agency because they had the next guy ready to go. So as much as I love Alvin Kamara, and I am not saying kick Alvin Kamara to the curb, I love Alvin Kamara. He's been an amazing New Orleans Saint, good locker room guy. He's been so much fun to watch. He's been the most consistent offensive weapon the Saints have had since they drafted him, obviously considering injuries to guys like Michael Thomas, etc. Man, I love Alvin Kamara, and I'm not saying be done with him. I'm just saying you have to start preparing for the inevitability of his decline and what's next. And this is a year where you're going to get great value on a potential awesome running back. I mean, like you did with Kamara when you took him in round 3 in 2017. So it's time to look for that guy this year. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.